On March 3rd, MJ Bassett revealed on Instagram that she is now writing and directing the in-development Red Sonja feature film. The implication of that is that the previously announced writer and director, Tasha Huo and Joel Soloway respectively, are no longer involved. Over the course of the next few days, it was also revealed that the outgoing director Joel Soloway's choice for Red Sonja herself, Hannah John Kamen, who was announced back in May of last year, is also out of the production. So, as is by now a time-honored tradition when it comes to the Red Sonja feature film, which has been in some stage of development for a decade and a half by now, the production has yet again been completely reset, with the slate wiped clean and a new iteration of the movie beginning under writer and director MJ Bassett. But is the shift from Soloway to Bassett a step in the right or wrong direction? And could the Bassett iteration of Red Sonja succeed where all previous iterations have failed and actually end up getting made? I will be exploring that in this editorial, as I first speculate as to why Soloway, Tasha Huo and Hannah John Kamen all left, before detailing why I think hiring MJ Bassett is perhaps the best move this production has done for a very, very long time. And finally, if the movie actually might happen this time. When Soloway and Huo were first announced as directing and writing their by now defunct iteration of Red Sonja, we made a very detailed video exploring their past work, as well as the origins of the Red Sonja character and the development history of the Red Sonja movie. I do suggest you watch that video, but to very briefly recap. After trying and failing to get the movie funded and off the ground for years, producer Avi Lerner, whose past output is 90% low-budget B-level testosterone-driven schlock, must have decided to try to go for activist investors looking to fund the message, because there is honestly no other reason to hire Joey Soloway and Tasha Huo for a project like Red Sonja. Beginning with writer Tasha Huo, her past output includes a gardening special and, well, I'm sure she must have done some other uncredited work, but her only other recognized credit is showrunning the upcoming Tomb Raider series. But that only came about not too long before she was announced for Red Sonja, so the only formal past credit remains that gardening special. Turning to director Joey Soloway, their first claim to fame was the short story Courtney Cox's Asshole. And no, I'm not making that up. That is the actual title, and yes, it is indicative of what the story is about. From there, writing gigs, directorial gigs, and eventually showrunning gigs followed, most notably on Amazon's Transparent, which was inspired by Soloway's own life and family. Recurring themes in Soloway's work include gender identity and its fluidity, social justice, and social justice activism. And these aren't merely themes. These, according to past interviews, are the driving forces behind all of Soloway's creative output. There is, however, very little in that output to suggest that Soloway would be a good fit with the kind of movie Red Sonja should be. And by very little, I mean literally nothing. That is not to say that Soloway couldn't have done it. Case in point, the Russo brothers of Avengers fame hadn't done anything to suggest they were ready to take on Captain America the Winter Soldier when they got that gig, yet they knocked it out of the park. Who is to say that Soloway couldn't have done the same for Red Sonja?
You serious?
It's not very likely, of course, but let's be generous and say that Soloway making a great Red Sonja movie could have happened, now that we know we'll never find out. We don't know much about what Huo and Soloway had planned for their vision of Red Sonja, other than that Hannah John Kamen was their choice for Sonja herself. And I stress their choice, as in Soloway's choice for Red Sonja. Soloway has indicated in past interviews that they requires complete autonomy and creative control, including in casting. Hannah John Kamen was Soloway's Red Sonja. We don't know much about what kind of Red Sonja she would have been, other than that she would not be wearing the iconic chainmail bikini, as the Soloway iteration of Red Sonja was explicitly against the deeply problematic male gaze. Quite possibly, she would be wearing armor, like Galadriel in the Rings of Power, so she'd probably look quite a lot like she did in Ant-Man and the Wasp. So what happened? Why are we not getting Soloway, Huo, and John Kamen's Red Sonja? We don't know, and I have heard no rumors or other chatter, but if I were to speculate, so do note that we are now in speculation territory, but I would make the educated guess that this comes back to Soloway's well-known demand for complete autonomy and creative control, which producer Avi Lerner is happy to give, right up to the point where he disagrees with something. That's the point where complete autonomy and creative control goes out the window. I would imagine that Soloway and Huo came up with a vision for the movie which no doubt would have been intriguing in its own right, but it would not have been the Red Sonja that fans know from the comics, and that is the Red Sonja that Avi Lerner has been trying to make for years now. Maybe Lerner was happy to seek activist funding, but less so about following through and actually spending that money on an activist movie. Lerner might have blocked something Soloway wanted, which might have caused an impasse, causing them to leave. If Soloway left, it really should come as no surprise that both Huo and Hannah John Kamen would leave with them. Huo wasn't hired to write any Red Sonja movie, but very specifically Soloway's Red Sonja. Likewise, Hannah John Kamen wasn't the production company's choice, but Soloway's Red Sonja. Without Soloway, that whole dam breaks. We may never know exactly what transpired, but whether they showed themselves the door or they were invited to leave, the writer, director, and star are all gone, mandating a restart of the production. What is more, this must have happened months ago, because a new writer and director has already been found. Of all the directors that have ever been attached to this production, few have been as good a fit as M.J. Bassett. She wrote and directed the dark horror fantasy Death Watch back in 2002, and has more recently both written and directed episodes of Ash vs. Evil Dead, as well as directed episodes of both Motherland, Fourth Salem, Altered Carbon, and Amazon's Jack Reacher, which I hear is tremendously good. Most importantly though, Bassett wrote and directed the 2009 feature film Solomon Kane, based on the original stories by Robert E. Howard, the creator of both Conan and the original literary Red Sonja, from which Roy Thomas co-created the comic book version of the character. I know some will object that Bassett's Solomon Kane was an origin movie, and Howard never wrote an origin for Solomon Kane. This is true, but the reality of filmmaking at the time when Solomon Kane was made was that because of Batman Begins and Casino Royale, everyone funding such movies in the late aughts demanded that the first movie must be an origin story, so that it could be a hit like Batman Begins, and the sequel could be a monster blockbuster smash hit like The Dark Knight. Investors at the time were quite adamant about this. The first movie had to be an origin story, or there would be no movie, period. Hence, Bassett was mandated to cook up an origin for Solomon Kane, and ended up doing a great job at it. And casting James Purefoy as Solomon Kane was nothing short of a stroke of genius, as he absolutely nailed the part. So, to sum up Bassett like we did Soloway, recurring themes in Bassett's work include action, adventure, horror, science fiction, and sword and sorcery. In my opinion, her past experience, Solomon Kane in particular, makes M.J. Bassett the perfect fit to write and direct a movie like Red Sonja. With Bassett at the helm, I am more excited for this movie than I have ever been before. With Bassett writing and directing, I'm not all that worried about the movie itself, as Bassett simply makes entertaining movies. But I am worried about producer Avi Lerner and his production company's ability to first actually make the movie, and secondly, to sit back and allow Bassett to take care of things without getting too involved in the proceedings. Earlier, I spoke of different iterations of the movie, and I stand by that. M.J. Bassett is making a different iteration of the movie than Soloway and Huo were. As far as Bassett is concerned, nothing that happened before matters. It all starts over. But Soloway and Huo were in the exact same boat when they first came aboard, and so were Bryan Singer and Ashley Edward Miller before them. The constant here is producer Avi Lerner and the cadre around him at Millennium Pictures. Every single past failed iteration of the movie failed on their watch. The reasons differed each and every time, but there was always something, and that suggests something systemic, and in Millennium's End. With MJ Bassett, they have the most appropriate director for Red Sonja they have had in years. I sincerely hope that Millennium recognizes that under Bassett's watch, the chance of a really good Red Sonja movie, at least on paper, is better than it's ever been. Or to put it another way, if Millennium blows this, they might as well give up and accept the millions of dollars wasted over more than a decade. We'll keep you up to date with the behind-the-scenes drama on Red Sonja and other productions as they unfold, and if you are into that, and since you're here, you probably are, then we have a recommendation for you. The team that brought you In Search of Darkness, the definitive behind-the-scenes documentary on 80s horror, are back with a brand new, epic behind-the-scenes documentary, namely In Search of Tomorrow. In Search of Tomorrow takes you on a year-by-year deep dive into the science fiction films of the 1980s, such as Star Wars, Star Trek, Blade Runner, E.T., Back to the Future, Dune, RoboCop, Aliens, Tron, War Games, The Terminator, Ghostbusters, Predator, and a whole host of others. With a running time of 5 hours, it takes you behind the scenes with the actors, special effects and visual effects masters, as well as tech advisors, authors, influencers, composers, and visionaries. We have seen it is amazing and well worth having. But you can only buy it for a limited time only, and the expiration date is March 27th of 2022. That's pretty soon. To get your copy, head down to the description, where you will find our affiliate link, so you can find the right package for you. With that, let us know your thoughts on all of this in the comments.